miss you, in the social work department. But before I even start talking, I have to do a few things. How many of my students are here right now? Oh, I love you guys. Oh, thank you. It's okay. You'll always be my student. So my social work practice is to just be transparent and authentic, right? And so I want to be transparent and authentic to say, I am nervous. I don't know half of you. You're not used to my high kicks in a class to get you engaged. And also, I must admit, when Natasha had asked me to speak, I was like, why? Literally, I was like, why? Because I realized that you guys bring in researchers. I'm not a researcher, per se. And actually, in our social work department, something that I really appreciate is that we come from a non-expert paradigm, which means, like, the burden's off my shoulders. I'm not the expert. We're just going to learn together. So if we can start this session with that framework in mind, I'm not here talking about my research, I'm just here talking about life. And I think we all can get on board with that, and that we are not experts in this field, neither am I. So are we good with that? Cool. For the first time in my life, I wrote notes. My students know I just like start channeling spirits and like go off down rabbit holes. And so because I only have 50 minutes, I wanted to keep it focused for you guys. So that's my treat for you. I am born and raised San Diego my whole life. Yes. Yes. And I did go to Point Loma Nazarene University. I studied industrial organizational psychology, which meant I was going to go into human resources and consulting, right? Then I was in an internship, and I was like, dang, I kind of hate people. I realized that the business sector was not for me. The issues and the problems that came about were just not issues, were not concerns I could get behind. And it was actually in San Diego, there is a network of schools for homeless children called the Monarch Schools. And I got to sit down and have an interview with them for a class, and it changed my whole life. I asked myself, like, why? Yeah, I make 6 figures going into the business sector, but why? And would that fulfill my purpose or my meaning in my desire to want to help people? And no, the answer was no. So I started in public health, doing alcohol and other drug prevention with youth, which was really incredible. This was more community organizing, getting groups together, taking children, youth who come from very disadvantaged, marginalized, oppressed neighborhoods, having them partner with law enforcement, city council, working with various city officials, stores, sting operations, which felt really awkward. But most importantly, it was a group of empowerment of youth whose experiences with some of those officials had never been positive, which led me into, dang, I should go into social work. And so that's essentially my story. I came up here 8 years ago, did my master's, have been working ever since, and now I work at the university. I felt like it was important to give you a little bit of that before I started. Also, before I start, I think it's really important to acknowledge I have to pay tribute to my ancestors, because without them and without that sacrifice, I wouldn't be here. This is really important in the framework of my own social work practice, which we're going to get into about empowerment and resilience. If we don't know where we come from, if we don't know where our clients come from, it's really difficult to actually be able to serve them, right? So regardless if you guys are social workers, or if you're going to go in, if you're going to actually be titled a psychologist, or whatever helping profession that you're going to go into, what I want you to take from this talk today is what you can do as a helping professional to stop continual oppression and marginalization of folks. Thank you.
I know I'm probably going to clap.
I mean, that's all right. That's all right. We're also wearing red. It's my power color. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to give you a crash course in Social Work 101. Okay, it's going to be fast. I don't got much time. we're already at 10 minutes. I'm gonna go really quick, okay? So for my students who are here, I expect you to know what the heck I'm talking about. And for the rest of you guys, it's cool. Just come along. So, hey girl. So first of all, so in the field of social work, there is the National Association of Social Workers. We have a code of ethics, an actual group of people that helps keep us accountable. And the only thing I wanted to point out here is the NASW core values. So there's so much more to this. There's an entire document. If you want it, Google it. But the point I wanted to really bring up to you are these components of service, social justice, dignity and worth of a person. And I just want to think about that for a second. Like, what a thought that in a helping profession, we want to focus on the dignity and worth of an actual person. The importance of human relationships, our integrity, the work that we do with people, and our competence. I want you to get rid of the word competence. Get rid of it. It's not in your vocabulary. And I want you to switch it out with the word humility. Girl, I appreciate that. And it's true, because the reality is the entire point of this talk is about our humility with working with people. And we are in a society right now where things are tense and they're heavy and there's so much difference and culture is like, right? We're going to talk about power and privilege. Some of you are like, oh, I want to hurl over because you're so sick of talking about it. But the reality is we have to talk about it. But when we talk about it, we cannot use the term competence. We have to come with humility because we just will never know. Is that fair to say? We just can never be competent in someone else's life. We will have humility and trying to have understanding. Something I want to bring up in the NASW is about self-determination, which is a huge basic tenet of social work practice. This is self-determination is a person's right to make their own choices and decisions. And as a social worker, and hopefully other helping professionals, this makes us feel sick inside. It should make you feel kind of sick inside when you hear that. Because you think you know what's right for people. People come to you for help and you're the professional and you're like, no, I got this. Like, I know what's good for you. But in social work, we want to come from the foundation that actually we don't know exactly what's good for you. You know what's good for you. And we want to help you get there. Following me so far? So, now I have to give you a crash course in theory. Yuck. Slash I love it, right? So, let's talk about systems theory. What you need to know about systems theory is this. In social work, we have this acronym called PIE. Yes, we like to eat pie, but it's more than eating pie. It is the acronym for person and environment. When we are assessing people, we are looking at them within the context of multiple levels of systems. So think about this when you're thinking about diagnosing a person, when you're thinking about them coming in for an intake interview. And I'm not going to draw it out for you because I don't have a pen, but it's circles. Boom, boom, boom. So inside is the client. And then the next circle is this meso level, and we're looking at them within the context of their community, within the context of their school, within the context of their church, within the context of all these other external factors that contribute to who they are and why they make the decisions that they make. And then on this macro level is the big stuff, the political stuff, the historical trauma, their culture, the social, we already said political, but the social implications of who they are and their being. This is very different from saying you came in because you have AOD issues, you're an alcoholic. As compared to saying, cool, you've come in, we know you have problematic substance use, but let's also look at these other factors that contribute to that use. In social work, we also come from a strengths perspective. So when I say this, sometimes people are like, you guys just want to see rose-colored glasses, like we're just over here jumping on rainbows or something. And although I would love to do that, if you have, let me know afterwards. I'd like to consult with you. But in social work, we come from a strengths perspective. And this is very different than the medical model. The medical deficit-based model, which is you are bad, right? What is wrong with you? As opposed to asking what is working for you. The strengths-based perspective is our focus on the client's talents, their abilities, and their natural systems and supports. Guess what? Every single person in this room has supports, natural resources that they have available to them. And if we are good helping professionals, we're going to ask them who those folks are. It may not be their immediate family. It may not be the community that they're in. But they have natural supports that are available to them that can actually help them. That is a strength. Resiliency. Gosh, what a word we throw around. Oh, this person's resilient, right? They're resilient. Strengths-based. Where's my juniors at? I see you. This on the spot. Let's do this. When I ask you to tell me what strengths perspective is, what do I ask? What do I make you guys say every time?
They're resilient. People are resilient.
Yeah, I'll take that. Good job. Air high fives. In the strengths perspective, we believe that people are inherently resilient. That means they already have the tools they need to deal with adversity, to deal with crisis, to deal with stressors, and to be healthy. But many people don't. They need their tools sharpened in their toolbox. And that's our job. We just help them sharpen them. Or we give them some new tools, because maybe that tool's not working. Okay, so you asked me to talk about a social justice framework. But when I say social justice, what does that mean to you? Not all at once. Just shout it out. When you hear social justice, what do you think? Equality, women's rights. What?
Equity.
Equity, what else?
Love.
I'll take it. I love that. Love, what else?
Activism.
Activism. Yes, 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 yes. It's all true. But where does that fit in our work as helping professionals? Really? Luckily, in social work, it is a part of our core values. I showed you that in the beginning, right? Like we don't have to pretend that we're not fighting for social justice. Like we get to put it in our core values. The beautiful thing is every person in this room who is interested in helping another person can adopt a social justice framework. You don't have to be a social worker to do that. We first have to talk about power and privilege. Now let me make this very clear. I'm not just talking about white men, right? You can nod your heads, it's cool. When I'm talking about power and privilege, I'm not just talking about white men. What I'm talking about is you as a professional will hold so much power and privilege over your clients. Over and over and over and over again. Even if you think you are joining with them, we're cool. We boom, right? You have a secret handshake with your high schoolers. You've helped this person find a home. They're trying to invite you to their house for a meal. You still have power over your clients. Don't ever think differently. Ever. Especially in your work, we hold so much power. Think about this for a second. Progress notes, okay? When you're in the field and you are just writing notes about a client, do you know that you have the ability to promote justice and equality and help fart, good night. It's cool. And you can fart if you want. You have the ability to fight marginalization and oppression even in your progress notes. Because I'll tell you this, you write notes about your clients, they follow them forever. The way that you decide to write about a client, they're an addict, they're poor, right? They came in angry. In my class, we talk about what's the difference between a resistant client and a resilient client. Who gets labeled resistant? Who gets labeled resilient? But guess what? You put those terms in your notes, it's following your client. So the next person who gets them is like, dang, I already know this person's resistant. That is a way. I'm talking about simple stuff, folks. I'm not talking about getting in the streets and holding signs. Do it. I'm all about it. But I'm talking about the everyday work and the interactions we have with clients. We have opportunities to fight oppression. So the point of social justice is actually there are groups of people in our community, in our society, who have always been rendered voiceless. They do not have a voice. And we have opportunities as professionals with power. We have education, right? That already put us up so far. right? Supposedly I'm not supposed to have power. I'm a black woman, and I'm still telling you, I hold a lot of power in the interactions I have with clients. How do I come to the table with them? Really ask yourselves that. Do you come as this person who holds power and who holds judgment, who holds the future of their lives really in their hands if you think about it? And if you're coming with that power, do you acknowledge it, and what ways can you actually bring it back to the client so that they can be empowered? The simplest way are in your notes, in your interactions with clients, the way you speak about your clients to other coworkers. Are you following me so far? Cool. Another way that we can come from a social justice context, so raise your hand if you are a psychology major. Cool. Keep your hand up if you know the history of psychologists, how you guys have hurt and oppressed groups for a long time. Good. Hold them up high. Cool. Put your hand down. If you are a psychology major and you don't know that stuff, raise your hand. Psychology department. I know, look at her. She's like, you better know. I was trying to help you out. This is a part of our call to social justice. Because guess what, folks? And I'll talk about this later. We, for years, have been thinking we've been helping people out. For years, we were like, we got this. We know what's good for people. And it turns out conversion therapy, if you were considered queer, isn't helpful. Right? It turns out giving black men syphilis without them knowing through the U.S. Public Health Department so that we can test and see how syphilis works actually didn't help them. It turns out that social workers and educators were a part of boarding schools. We cut Native American children's hair. We helped save the savage. We were a part of this, folks. Like, we wanted to help. And so if we really genuinely have the desire to help people, do we know our history? And I'm not just talking about personally, I'm talking about our profession. Do we understand the ways in which we hold power and privilege over people? The ways in which we literally construct people's lives and narratives? And what that's looked like over centuries? Our call to social justice is actually, we can change that in our ability to be mindful, in our ability to be so intentional, and to come to the table as a partner with people instead of the owner, instead of the expert. In social work, we have macro level work. So, and I know that in psychology, I'm sure that there are opportunities for macro level work as well. Some people go into community organizing. They want to rally groups together because there's an issue in a community and they want to help give a community a voice. There are people who go and actually do policy change. There are policies that are actually extremely discriminatory, extremely oppressive to many groups of people, and people go into policy change. Okay, so that's heavy, right? I'm sweating. That's heavy, right? Cool. So now here's the other piece of it. We care a lot. I can tell in this room. Most people aren't looking at me like, this girl. You guys actually care. You genuinely are invested in making a difference in the way that you impact people's lives, the way that you enter people's lives. But on the flip side of that is it's exhausting. Right? We're not perfect. Like, how can we keep true to this for the entire time that we are with a person or working with folks? We talk about self-care, and I'm going to tell you guys a secret. I hate the word. I genuinely, if someone else asks me what I'm doing for my self-care, I'm going to kick myself in the face. Because self-care has become another term we use it's another thing you didn't do. I'm going to do yoga 3 times a week. I love yoga. But in the middle of an intense family crisis, I'm not whipping out a yoga mat and going in a downward dog. Like, that is not, right? Like, that is not realistic. And so I want to now talk with you about wellness, right? Because this is more encompassing. When we talk about self-care, it's so reflective on the individual. when in reality, wellness is a collective issue. So, I'm like trying to get cool with my PowerPoints and try to write. Make it like a collage, it didn't work. And my grad students, and I think some of my juniors have probably seen some of these quotes before, because for years I've held near and dear to these quotes for myself. They've just made sense. I just draw on them when I need the inspiration. So we'll start with my girl Bell Hooks. Who's going to San Francisco to speak, and SFSU will not let other people go. So I'm a little hurt about that. That's a side note. I'm really pissed about it. So one of the most vital ways we sustain ourselves is by building communities of resistance, places where we know we are not alone. Mitch Albom came to me after my undergrad studies. The way you get meaning into your life is to devote yourself to loving others, devote yourself to your community around you, and devote yourself to creating something that gives you purpose and meaning. And lastly, I just want to start doing high kicks when I talk about this, but caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. There are so many of us, just historically, that have not been allowed to practice self-care for a long time. Many of us. And what I would like to encourage you guys to consider as you think about self-care is to think beyond self and to think about the impact if you care for yourself and you care for your community. If we go back to systems theory, right? The impact that has across systems. That the health of you is the health of the community, and the health of the community is the health of you. But we're in a very individualistic framework right now, and hoping that we can open up and become more of a collectivist framework in our thinking. Here are my tips. I did not write them down, but this is just from my own experience. I did child protective services for a little over 2 years, and I literally wanted to jump off a bridge. That's not even to be funny. The compassion fatigue was so extreme. The pain, the trauma, the sorrow of families, our construct of policing folks on how they're to parent, how children should be raised, who's right, who's wrong, the extreme caseload, and the desire to literally want to help people became too much. And so I burned out. And then I went to another job where it was crazy, and I worked with adults with developmental disabilities, which was really beautiful and amazing, because you want to talk about self-determination with folks who in our society have literally been rendered silent, right? Didn't even have rights. And now I'm working with folks who get to choose that they want to live on their own. And that still was burnout. So I took a year off. I learned dance fitness, I danced around Seattle, moved my body, and I've had some time to really reflect on, dang, that burnout is bad. How many of you guys have experienced burnout at some point in your life? Yeah, exactly. And especially when your heart is in it, when you genuinely are being compassionate towards people, that compassion fatigue is so real. So what do we do? How do we take care of ourselves? I can give you my own little mini tips that I've learned for myself. Which is, number one, in these professions where we work with people, we rarely talk about secondary trauma. What happens when you're hearing all these stories constantly, and the reality that you actually don't have control over people's lives? We don't talk about that enough in the helping professions. I think a part of that also is we don't have enough opportunities to stop and reflect. We just don't. We just run. Oh, I gotta get here, I got this client, this one after this, right? And then at night, you're like, you still are not shutting your brain off. What opportunities do we have to stop and reflect and ask ourselves and to have critique, right? How many of you guys would think in your sessions with clients, at the end, to ask them to critique your work? Yeah, you can say no. You've thought to do that.
Yeah, I do.
Because you're in red, just, you know. Anyone else? Anyone else literally thought, at the end of these sessions, I should ask my clients, like, not just if this worked for you, but I genuinely want to know how this really worked for you. Have I been effective for you? Do you have critiques of the work I've done with you? Not because you love yourself that much, but because you want to be able to reflect on that experience and move forward. How would you know if you actually were extremely offensive or extremely oppressive in the work that you did with a client? How will you know? These opportunities are rare. And if we start out our careers, right? If we start out our work having opportunities to really stop and think and reflect, it helps to preserve us. It really does. The next thing I wanted to bring up is grace. I say this a lot to my roommate. My God, we are so mean to ourselves, people. But more so, we're actually kind of mean to clients. We don't want to admit it, but we do. We have high expectations. We got a lot of stuff to do, so we're just trying to work through. If they don't know how to jump the hoops, well, I gotta move on. Where is the grace? For ourselves in the learning process, right? I tell my class this a lot, and I'm sorry, it's gonna be a cuss word. I want you to fuck up here. In class, do it, fuck up, say the wrong stuff, ask the weird questions, do the things that you don't think you're supposed to do, because I'd rather you do it here than be out in the field and continue to oppress and marginalize people. But with that comes grace. And in the work that we do, we need to acknowledge that we are going to mess up, and that we need to have more grace with ourselves. My favorite is to remove the cape and put on the gloves. We think we're superheroes. I did. I was like, I'm here to save everyone. I got it. I got you and you and you, and actually I don't have you and I don't have you. Oh my God, you're doing whatever you want with your life. Like, I can't control this. At some point in the helping profession, we literally have to remove our capes and we need to put on the gloves. We just got to do the work, right? Just like get in the garden and start doing the work, which means we're not going to save people. And I think I tell my students this constantly. You aren't going to save people. You won't even change people all the time. You will help people save themselves. You will help people change themselves. But you, that is not you. You don't get to hold that burden. That isn't fair to your client. It's on them, not you. And so for us to remove that cape, just put on the gloves, get in the garden, and do the hard work with people is worth it. And lastly, what the heck inspires you? You ever thought about that? Are you just too into school? Are you too into the work that you do? When do you have opportunities to stop and remind yourself why the heck you did this work in the first place? Right? What opportunities do you have to really ask yourself, how can I continue to further my inspiration? How many of you guys right now feel like you know yourselves enough to be able to know where your gas tank is? You know when you're empty, and you know when you're full, and you know when you need a break, and you know when you need to refill your gas tank. Yeah, I'm seeing nopes.
I'm 51.
She's like, yeah, girl.
Figured it out.
You're what?
I'm 51. I just figured it out.
Totally. Well, guess what? In this helping profession work we do, you're going to learn it quicker than that, or you're going to learn it later than that, because it's going to run you ragged. If we are not healthy, we're not good for our clients. That's why wellness and self-care is so important, because actually it has a huge impact and implication on the communities we work with. So, I guess my bigger question is, how do we know when we are helping, and how do we know when we are hurting? How do you know? Yeah?
People tend to shut down when they're hurt, but open up when they feel like they're being given what they need.
Okay. That's great. Yeah,
You don't know until you ask.
totally. Yes.
Reflecting on your work and on yourself,
and with the people you work with.
Yeah.
I said journaling, you know, like just checking in with like a passage from something that's, you know, something that we can reflect on, and then seeing how that journal might like teach us something about ourselves and what we're going through.
Yeah.
Data collection, noticing trends and seeing if we're seeing progress or if we're seeing cause.
Anyone else? How do you know if you're helping or if you're hurting? Yeah.
I'm gonna go back and ask the client.
You're gonna ask the client. Great. I'll take it. Yeah.
This might be a little too touchy-feely, but
Say it
when
loud.
you're helping, you feel good, and when you're hurting, you feel it.
So for you, it's a reflection on self. If you feel good, you know you're helping. But if you don't feel good, you know you're hurting. Do you guys want to know the answer? Of course that's the answer. The answer is there really isn't an answer. And this is a question we've been asking ourselves in the helping profession for years. Or maybe we should have been asking ourselves this question for years. But now we're doing it, right? It's 2017. We're a new generation of folks. We need to start asking, how do we know when we are helping? And how do we know when we are hurting? I think that there is a beautiful marriage between the field of psychology and the field of social work. And actually, when I teach graduate theory, many of our theoretical frameworks come from a psychological perspective. And so that's what I was thinking about when I was asked to speak. You guys want to know how to work with marginalized and oppressed communities? You already know how to. The reality is, you need to come to the table as a partner. When we are trying to ally with someone, we need to take a significant step back and allow for them to really dictate where we're going. Even in sessions with people, the work that you do with people, if you are going to get into community organizing, or if you're literally doing the micro work where you literally just want to do one-on-one counseling, this is still applicable. Do you know your client's history? Did you make assumptions from their file? Or did you really ask them? Do you know their cultural history? Do they come from a background of significant historical trauma? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, many folks do. Do they come from a population that has been rendered voiceless in our society? I'm going to say yes, most people do. And so how are we then intentional in the work that we do with them to make sure they have a voice? To make sure we're not a part of this oppressive system? These are the questions we must ask ourselves as helping professionals when we are going into people's lives who are vulnerable and who we have power over, if we are actually helping and if we are hurting. And a part of that comes from acknowledging our power first. I already gave you a few examples of times in life where there are plenty of helping professionals who thought, dang, we're doing good work. Yeah, kill them off. Right? Like they weren't doing good work. They thought they were, though. And God forbid we look forward 20 years from now and say, shoot, like why did we do that? And you know what? Inevitably there will be some things that we are doing now that in 20 years we're going to be like, damn it, why did we do that? But the hope is that we are so intentional in the steps that we are taking with clients that we will surpass a lot of those of continued oppression and marginalization. Right now, politically, and we're not, like, this isn't a conversation about who our president is. I'm just talking about societally, the attention, the vibe, you can use what the energy, whatever word you want to use about what's going on right now for us as a country. There is this call to arms, especially for people who are wanting to fight for equality, for, what are the other words you guys use for social justice? Equity. For those of us who are trying to fight for those who don't have a voice, right? Or who want to legitimately fight for equality, it's now. I was talking to someone who's in their 60s, and I was like, gosh, I used to always say, I wish I was born, or I wish I was a young adult in the 60s and the 70s so I could be in the streets. And as I was talking, I was like, no, that's now. Like, that's actually right now. And even if your calling isn't to be in the streets, how will you be in the streets with your clients? How will you come to the table and work with people, with communities? How will you acknowledge your power, your privilege in this working relationship? This isn't specific to social work. This is specific to humans, right? Like, this is our time. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is this notion of who is deserving of services. And this totally ties into this call to arms. We have weird bias about who deserves services, right? You didn't come twice, so you can't come anymore. You used, you use substances, you no longer get aid to assist your family. We have this weird notion of like who is deserving, like the deserving poor and who deserves services. And I hope that you would also take that into your practice as you work with people. How do we dictate who deserves services and who doesn't? Or who deserves our attention? Or who deserves our compassion? Or who deserves our kindness? The last thing I wanted to bring up, and then I will open it up for a question. I did pretty good on time. I cut a lot back, I told you. People are falling asleep. I'm just kidding, it's warm in here. So. This is what I wanted to say about this. I am not trying to steal people.
Yeah, you are.
I'm not like, come to the dark side. It's actually pretty bright. What I do want to mention, though, is we have plenty of people in the master's program who have a bachelor's education in psychology. I myself had one in psychology, organizational psychology, but still it was psychology. And yeah, just like, and the marriage between the two is actually really profound. There are we have online programs and on-campus programs. I can put this up at the end of my talk and you can look at this more. If you are interested in talking to an admissions representative from the social work department, you'll just email socialwork@humboldt.edu, just SW, not the full social work. And lastly, this is my sweet, precious dog, Lulu. She's not vicious. This is her smiling. And what I wanted to end with is this. I love social work. And I've hated social work. And I didn't want to hear the word social work. But at the end of the day, this isn't about social work, right? This isn't about psychology. This isn't about being a professor. This is about our calling to being in community. And we have people in our communities who aren't being heard, and who do not have rights, who are still being oppressed, and it is 2017. So, what I will challenge you all with, I don't care if you come over, so I'd love to see you, but I don't care if you come over to social work. As you continue in your helping professions, and as you just continue to figure out what the heck you're going to do with your life, may you remember that you as a professional will always have power over people. And that the way that you change that can be so impactful or detrimental in people's lives. Thank you. Thank you, my students and friends. I'm not crying. So I'm open for questions. Don't be scared.
Okay, I'll start us off.
Yeah.
When did you know, like you got your bachelor's degree in industrial organizational psychology.
Uh-huh.
When did you know that helping profession, whether it's industrial organizational psychology or social work, when did you know that was for you?
Probably since I came out the womb. I think that my place in my family, I think that, I think I've always been a social worker, you know, like seriously since I was a toddler. And I think many of us come to help people because we've always been the helper, whether it's in our family or friend groups. And also there's a part of me that thinks that these type of fields call people. In social work, we get paid okay, but we don't get paid rank. Like I'm not gonna make 6 figures like I could have. I'm being a consultant. So there literally has to be meaning and purpose in some sort of calling in your desire to be a social worker or to be in a helping profession. Thank you. Hi.
How do you not scare away your students from your own experiences and when they're going through social work?
Totally. That's a really great question. Well, I got students here. So in my own education, I came from a cohort of people who loved each other, but were so dead set on just like changing the system and the way that it worked that we almost were set up for failure. That we did not have enough opportunities for the reality of the difficulty of the work. And so when I came into this position, that was my entire intent, is not to scare people, but to be honest about like, actually this is really, we always hear it's hard work, but like, no, it is like really hard work. So where is the balance? How do we take care of ourselves? When do we know when too much is too much? I have my cohort members here. I know I can draw on these ladies anytime, any night, or any night, any day, any minute, any morning. And so, I don't know, students, do you feel scared? Do you feel scared? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah, it's a healthy scare? What about my juniors? Do you guys feel scared? Yeah?
More quicker with that.
Do you still want to do it?
Yeah.
That's awkward. Yeah.
Trying not to cry here.
It's okay.
It's really hard. I just want to say, like, I'm a child development major, and I'm like participated with you in the social work labs. I just want to say it's like a very profound field. If I wasn't as far in my child development field, I would be having a bachelor's in social work. I want to stress the importance of having a cohort and being together, because other fields, other general GE courses I've had, they're really competitive and all that, but in the social work classes that I've had, it's really a cohort, and it's like a family, and like you can rely on each other, and just seeing you here and being able to see you again inspires me. It's inspiring.
So, first of all, we've been trying to steal you for a long time. But there's always your masters. So, and that's the thing. So first of all, thank you. Thank you, I really mean that. And second of all, that's for all of you guys. Like, many of you guys are social work majors in this room, but that does not mean that you still cannot pursue a master's in it. My master's students are here. And I'll tell you something special about these guys. They super love each other. And there is something to be said about being in a cohort of people who actually get along and doing classes together, right?
Yeah.
You'll have me again next year. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, hi.
So you talked about how you don't like the term self-care because you feel like it's what I gathered from it was that you feel like it's something that you just have to do, like it's a requirement. But you also talk about care of the self. So what does that look like to you?
Totally.
Wellness and care of the self.
So when we have talked about self-care so much, and we've done these plans in our program, right? We write out self-care plans like, this is what I'm going to do for self-care. And I have my students do it too. And then literally you're like, I'm going to do yoga. or I'm gonna take walks so I can breathe, right? Or I'm gonna like join with a friend, or I'm gonna do these things. When I was in the field, I remember thinking, okay, I've got 2 more court reports to write. I can't get to yoga tonight. I'm gonna beat myself up. I'm gonna drink a bottle of wine and eat cake. It started to become one more thing I could not get done during the day. Does that make sense? So self-care became a real nasty taste in my mouth. I see some heads because you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so I needed to reframe it for myself. That maybe it wasn't one more thing I needed to add on the day to do. That it was just about my wellness. So in my junior class, in the beginning of last semester, we really tried to focus on what is the stuff we can do in the moment when we are starting to get to that point. I'm not talking about the downward dog in the middle of the meeting. I'm talking about, can you take a break? I'm talking about basic stuff, things you think you know, but you don't when you're just when you're running in that hamster wheel. So that's the difference. We coined this term self-care. It became nasty for me, so I had to change it to wellness. What are just things I can be doing that are small in the moment? What are the bigger scope of things that I can be doing? And what are the things I need to do for prevention? That, for me, I can get behind. Not, damn it, I missed yoga again. Cake and wine. Does that make sense? Erin.
So, although we are going into professional positions of helping people, we are also human.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what would you say, when thinking about helping as opposed to hurting, what I'm hearing is like learning how to be an ally for your clients.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are steps to doing that if maybe your client is someone that you have no context about what they may be experiencing in their lives?
So, I'm hearing you ask me, how are you to be an ally with someone that you don't really have an understanding of their lived experience? Great question. First of all, we have to just take a step back. When I have, I'll speak from my own experience, when I have worked with folks who come from a completely different lived experience than myself, I, number one, cannot make assumptions that I know how they live their life, or I know how they feel about things, right? I started off my entire session saying I try to come with transparency and authenticity. So even with that, I am honest with my clients. I know nothing about you. I'm not even trying to pretend like I can understand your experience. Can you fill me in? Can I be in relationship with you? I want to be alongside your journey so I know how to help put tools in your toolbox. But you got to guide this. In those experiences, even in experiences where they hate me because I'm like there to take their kid away, even in those experiences, I've been able to really work with people and them trust me, right? To be in a courthouse to say like, this is what's going on, or I have not struggled with addiction myself. I do not know what that experience is like. I know my own judgments and my own biases around those though, or around that issue though. And so when I come to my client with a lived experience that is different than mine, I genuinely just try to come with humility. And the acknowledgement, I'm not an expert and I don't know. And I need you to lead me on this. That's all I got. Hi.
Hi, let me ask you about community organizing for a second, for
Sure.
folks that aren't doing one-on-one. So when I look at your question about hurting and helping, the answer is when the organizer is doing all the talking, they're hurting, and when the residents are doing all the talking, they're helping. So I'm the boss of a lot of community organizers. How do I help them? How do I help them remain calm and not eat all the things that they're hearing? What, you run cohorts. How do you help your students not absorb that so they can really do their job and come from a place of love instead of anger?
Ooh. So number one, I don't do that.
Okay. Okay, give me some advice.
Totally. You would think, yes, I have cohorts of students. So let me rephrase that. I have a group of so my seniors are here, and they are in seminar with me. That means that they are there to process their field experience. They're now they're in the field, they're doing the work. They come, we process the experience. The first step is processing. What avenues do your students or community organizers have to sit and process with each other, right? To get it out. And not just venting. This is something we've been working on in my upper classes. It's cool to vent, get that out, but like, where are we going from here? What support do we need? What is the vision? But furthermore, I have small experience in community organizing with my little folks down in San Diego. But my belief about community organizing is, if your community organizer is doing all the talking, they're not organizing, right? That when we talk about being an ally, or when we talk about empowering folks, when is there silence? That really our job as community organizers or group facilitators, it's from our juniors, is to really examine who we have with us, who are our natural leaders in this group, who are the voices of the folks who are voiceless, how can we develop those skills? Not me doing all the work and the leadership. As a community organizer, I should be more invisible. And so if that is the focus of that work and that intention in those processing groups, then hopefully there could be more conversation around that. How can we be more invisible? And how can we make our community members or the folks that we're helping to organize more visible? And how can we support each other in this secondary trauma and these stories? Because oftentimes other people don't understand us. I like to tell this story, I think, to my seniors, no, to all my students, that when I was doing child welfare work, I'd go to parties, I was the biggest buzzkill, right? They're like, what do you do? And I'm like, I don't think you want to know. They're like, no, really, like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, no. They're like, ah, like, walk away. They're like, I'm not drunk anymore, you know, like. And I bring that up mostly because that's why it's so important that we stick together, right? That we have those opportunities to process with one another. Because we're really the only ones who really get what we're doing in those moments. It's real. Yeah. Is that helpful?
No, but it's okay. No, I mean, I'm sorry. No, it was helpful. I just worry we're going to create a culture here of community organizing that is based on, okay, we're just going to burn out organizers and then hire next one, and burn out and hire the next one.
Exactly.
And that's the way I see it going.
Exactly. Right, and so the burnout is, where is the balance of self-care?
Yeah, exactly.
I used it. Where is the balance of self-care and wellness? Right? And so that is our ability to stop and to examine and to reflect. Am I okay? Because if I'm not, I'm actually doing harm to the people I'm working with. Do I need to check with my supervisor? Do I need to lessen my load? Do I need a break? Right? Do I need to find some opportunities to be inspired? Something needs to happen. And so that conversation is more about the burnout and the prevention of it, and hopefully their ability to fall back a little bit more, which will also take some of the burden off. Hi, Tony.
So I just have a question. You just mentioned secondary trauma, and do you have any advice for those family and friends and just loved ones who are around social workers and people that are out there trying to help the world? And when they come home and you guys have been dealing with heavy things all day. And so do you have any advice as far as, when they're removed from work, what's the best way to support and help the social workers?
That's an incredible question. Yeah, no, it's an incredible question. I wish my ex was here. I wish my ex was here to help facilitate that conversation. Hence my ex, I'm just kidding. It was for other reasons. So let me just speak from personal experience, right? A part of this wellness is, how do we turn it off? So it's really hard, and it takes some time. But we have to have agreements with our loved ones on how to help keep us accountable. So I had a professor when I was in the program, I loved it. She said when she reached a certain tree on the corridor, she's done, right? That after work, that when she did that drive and she hit that tree, no more crying. She couldn't talk about it anymore. She had to shut it off because you can ruminate on it. It's so intense, and like we need an opportunity to get it out. I would challenge you as a loved one of a social worker to really help your loved social worker find boundaries around when is enough enough. Can you say 7 p.m. you're off the clock, like throw in the gloves, the cape is off? You know, like can there be some kind of rule to it, and can there be accountability to that? I know that in my home previously that was the rule. I would go to the gym afterwards, because then I could like work some stuff out, and when I came home and was ready to go, that it just like, no, I got 15 minutes. And that was actually good for me. We need people who aren't doing the work to help us come back to center, and to remember that like not everyone's experiencing trauma right now, and not everyone's dying, and not, you know, like we actually need those reminders. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Make a rule. She's all damn.
Earlier you mentioned like the heavy caseloads that social workers deal with all the time. And
Did I?
yeah. Since that's the case, how is it? It seems as though like social workers are just touch and go. So with that said, like how do they really take offense to any change in your clients, because it's so, your interactions are so limited. So like my understanding of like child protective services or like PCFS social workers is that, you know, you see your clients like once a month for like maybe 30 minutes. You're not supposed to settle the entire month, and then it's time for their welfare. So how do you, I mean, besides like administrative work and social workers duties?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. And then I know you guys gotta go. First of all, Child Protective Services is the belly of the beast. It is, you know, it's the most intense. All the social work jobs are intense, but that is literally the most intense one you're gonna jump into. And all the caseloads are high. But not all social work is case management. And that is a slide that I took out that I should have kept here. That actually, like being a social worker is much more than being a case manager. Social workers are counselors. Masters of social workers get licensed and become licensed clinical social workers. So guess what? You get to do therapy, but you get to bill Medi-Cal. That's why people like MSWs, actually, because they love to bill Medi-Cal, right? But you go back to like, can we actually make change in a system like child welfare, where it literally is burning up social workers and spitting them out? The truth is, yeah, because every single interaction you have with a human makes a difference. Do we get to see that? Not very quickly. But I can be content in the fact that actually I know I treated you with worth and dignity. Actually, I really heard you today. Actually, I was able to help you have a voice. Then I know that those are small triumphs that I can take. If you want to see bigger change, then you do the bigger stuff. I will say, I feel like the farther you go up in some of these agencies, the more separated you are from the work. The more removed you can be from your clients and the struggles and the trauma that they face. And so like really finding that balance is important. But that was a long explanation to say there are so many avenues of social work that I tell you that this MSW is so diverse that you really can do those things with it. It's not just I have to be a child welfare social worker. That's it.